The asteroid field stretched endlessly through space, a graveyard of rock and ice tumbling in the darkness around the Nexus route. Captain Nolan slouched in his command chair aboard the Intrepid, flipping his worn metal coin between weathered fingers as he studied the tactical display. The coin's rhythm quickened, never a good sign. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, the tactical officer announced, his voice tight with military precision. 3 Kaelid destroyers closing fast." Nolan's green eyes flicked to Sofia at her engineering station. Her amber gaze was already calculating, fingers dancing across her toolkit belt in that unconscious tick that meant her brilliant mind was spinning. "Options, Sofia?" "Give me 30 seconds, she muttered, tucking a strand of jet-black hair behind her ear. Her calloused hands flew over the controls, rerouting power conduits with the kind of improvised genius that made the Kaelids' rigid minds recoil. "I can overload the mining charges in Sector 7. Turn those asteroids into a proper welcome party." The navigator's gravelly voice drifted from her station, feet propped casually on her console despite the approaching death. "Swinging us through that mess, Cap. Just say when." Nolan's coin stilled in his palm. Through the viewport, the sleek Kaelid ships emerged from behind a tumbling mountain of ice, their hulls gleaming with that perfect alien precision that made his earthborn soul itch. Everything about them screamed order, formation spacing exact to the meter, weapon locks acquired with mathematical perfection, their approach vectors textbook examples of tactical superiority. "They think they know us," Nolan said, his voice carrying that dry humor that had kept him alive through Earth's chaotic wars. Time to disappoint them. The first Kaelid salvo lit up the void, plasma bolts carving through space with deadly accuracy. The Intrepid shuddered as near misses superheated her hull, but the navigator was already throwing them into a spiraling dive between 2 massive asteroids. Nolan felt the familiar chaos of combat settle over him like an old coat, the kind of beautiful, unpredictable madness that the Kaelids' ordered minds simply couldn't process. "Now, Sofia!" The mining charges erupted in sequence, turning a cluster of asteroids into an expanding cloud of high-velocity debris. The lead Kaelid destroyer, locked into its perfect attack formation, couldn't adapt fast enough. Chunks of rock and ice hammered its shields, overloading systems that had been designed for clean, orderly battles. "Direct hit on their lead ship," the tactical officer reported, his formal tone cracking with surprised excitement. "Shields down 60%. Sofia's sharp laugh cut through the bridge chatter. "Their AI can't handle random variables. Watch this." Her fingers flew over jury-rigged controls, turning the Intrepid's damaged sensor array into an improvised jamming system. The Kaelid formation wavered as their perfect coordination faltered. Nolan's coin resumed its steady rhythm as he watched the enemy ships struggle to reacquire targeting locks. "Navigator, take us through the debris field. Tactical, target their communications array on my mark." The Intrepid danced through the chaos like she was born to it, her patched hull and mismatched systems somehow finding harmony in the madness. The remaining Kaelid ships, their formation shattered, tried to pursue but found themselves fighting the asteroid field as much as the humans. "Mark?" The Intrepid's weapons, a hodgepodge of salvaged human tech and captured alien systems, spoke with chaotic fury. The second destroyer's comm array exploded in a shower of sparks, cutting it off from its companion's coordination protocols. As the surviving Kaelid ships retreated into the void, their perfect hulls scarred by asteroid impacts and human ingenuity, Nolan allowed himself a rare grin. The coin in his palm grew still. "Nice work, Sofia. Let's not die before lunch." The bridge erupted in weary laughter, but beneath it lay a grim truth. This had been just a probe. The real Kaelid Armada was still out there, perfect and patient, tightening its grip around the Nexus route like a steel noose. The Helix Nebula writhed with colors that had no names, its gas clouds providing cover for the ragtag collection of ships that called themselves the United Terran Fleet. Nolan stood in the cramped briefing room aboard the Intrepid, watching the faces of 23 ship captains who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. Captain Calvin of the Resilience leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You're asking us to commit suicide, Nolan. The Kaelids have 50 ships to our 24. "63 ships," corrected Captain Voss from the Defiant, his scarred face grim. "My scouts counted them twice. They've got us outnumbered 3-1. Nolan's coin flipped steadily between his fingers as he studied the assembled commanders. They were a motley bunch. Merchant captains pressed into military service, military officers commanding ships held together with hope and spare parts, smugglers who'd found their conscience when the Kaelids started strangling human trade routes. Earth's finest chaos, if you squinted hard enough. "They do have us outnumbered," Nolan agreed, his clipped voice cutting through the murmurs. "They also have us outgunned, outsupplied, and probably outsmarted on paper." His green eyes flicked around the room. "Anyone want to surrender?" The silence stretched taut as a hyperspace cable. Sofia's voice crackled over the comm from the engineering bay. "Captain, I've got those modifications ready. Want to show them what human ingenuity looks like when it gets creative?" Nolan's rare grin spread across his weathered face. "Patch it through to the main display." The holographic projector flickered to life, showing a Kaelid patrol ship drifting dead in space, its perfect hull scarred by what looked like concentrated lightning strikes. The assembled captains leaned forward despite themselves. "This beauty tried to scan our supply convoy 3 hours ago," Sofia's sarcastic voice explained. "Turns out their sensors can't handle feedback loops designed by someone who grew up fixing hydroponic systems during solar flares. Their entire electronic warfare suite got fried." Captain Calvin's posture shifted from skeptical to interested. "You turned their own scanning array against them?" "Better," Sofia replied. "I turned their perfectionist programming against them. When their AI couldn't resolve the contradictory data, it locked up trying to process the impossible. Classic over-engineered failure." Nolan stood, feeling the room's energy shift as Earthborn intuition began to override military pessimism. The Kaelids fight like they think, everything in perfect order, everything predictable. They've never faced an enemy that weaponizes chaos. He activated another display showing the tactical situation around the Nexus route. The Kaelid blockade formed a perfect sphere, each ship positioned with mathematical precision. "Look at that formation. Beautiful, isn't it? Every ship exactly where their combat algorithms say it should be." The navigator's drawling voice came over the comm from her station. "Looks like a chessboard to me, Cap. All neat and orderly. Shame we don't play chess." Captain Voss leaned forward, his military training warring with growing hope. "What are you proposing?" "We hit them where they don't expect it. Everywhere at once, with everything we've got, using tactics that make no sense." Nolan's coin stilled as he met each captain's eyes. "Sofia's rigged our ships with surprises that would make their AI weep if it could. Salvaged mining equipment, jury-rigged weapons, sensor ghosts, and enough electromagnetic noise to turn their perfect coordination into chaos." The room erupted in discussions as captains began sketching preliminary attack vectors, their voices overlapping in the kind of chaotic planning session that would have given Kaelid commanders nightmares. "When do we move?" Captain Calvin asked, her earlier skepticism replaced by predatory hunger. Nolan resumed flipping his coin, the rhythm steady now. 6 hours. Just enough time for Sofia to finish her modifications and for the Kaelids to settle into their perfect, predictable patrol patterns. As the captains filed out, already calling their crews to battle stations, Sofia's voice crackled privately through Nolan's comm. "Think they'll follow you into hell?" Nolan watched the nebula swirl outside the viewport, its chaotic beauty reminding him of Earth's storm-racked skies. "They're human, aren't they? We've been following each other into hell since we learned to walk upright." The Kaelid patrol moved through the debris field with mechanical precision, 3 destroyers in perfect triangular formation, their sensors methodically cataloging every piece of twisted metal and frozen atmosphere that had once been a merchant convoy. Commander Nolan watched them from behind a tumbling cargo hauler, his coin's rhythm matching his heartbeat as he counted down the seconds. "Contact in 90 seconds, the tactical officer whispered, his formal training barely containing his excitement. "All ships report ready." Sofia's voice crackled through the comm, sharp with anticipation. "My little surprises are deployed, hotshot. Hope you're ready for some fireworks." The navigator hummed an old Earth tune under her breath, her weathered fingers dancing over controls that would have looked like chaos to any regulation-trained pilot. "Got us lined up for the opening dance, Cap. Just give the word." Nolan studied the approaching Kaelids through the tactical display. Their formation was flawless, each ship positioned to provide maximum overlapping fire while maintaining optimal sensor coverage. Their hulls gleamed with that perfect alien sheen, unmarked by the kind of hasty repairs and jury-rigged modifications that kept human ships flying. Everything about them screamed superiority, order, inevitable victory. His grin was sharp as broken glass. Time to teach them about human improvisation. The first phase began with what looked like an accident. A piece of debris, actually one of Sofia's modified mining drones, drifted too close to the lead destroyer's scanning array. The Kaelid ship's automatic defense systems activated, vaporizing the wreckage with casual efficiency. The explosion that followed lit up the debris field like a miniature star. "Holy hell," the tactical officer breathed, his military composure cracking. "What did you put in those things?" Sofia's laugh was pure predatory satisfaction. "Concentrated antimatter wrapped in a sensor-reflective shell. Their own defensive programming turned it into a shaped charge. The harder they tried to destroy it cleanly, the bigger the boom." The lead Kaelid destroyer reeled away from the explosion, its perfect hull scarred and blackened, shields fluctuating as systems overloaded. But the real damage was to their formation. The precise geometric perfection that their tactical AI demanded had been shattered by something that shouldn't have been possible. "Phase 2, Nolan commanded, his voice carrying the calm certainty of a man who'd learned to thrive in chaos. "All ships, light them up." The human fleet erupted from concealment among the debris like predators from a maze. The Intrepid led the charge, her mismatched weapon systems spitting fire in patterns that made no tactical sense but somehow found their marks. The Resilience came from above, her modified mining lasers carving through Kaelid shields with industrial fury. The Defiant struck from below, her captain's scarred face grinning as his jury-rigged torpedo tubes launched a salvo of guided surprises. The Kaelids tried to respond with their perfect tactical doctrine, but chaos was contagious. Their remaining ships moved to establish overlapping fields of fire, only to find human vessels already positioned in their blind spots. Their targeting computers locked onto the largest human signatures, only to discover they were shooting at decoys while the real ships hammered them from unexpected angles. "Their AI is having a breakdown," Sofia reported, her voice tight with concentration as she monitored the enemy's electronic warfare attempts. "It keeps trying to establish fire superiority using predictable engagement protocols. Every time we do something that doesn't match their tactical database, it has to recalculate everything." The second Kaelid destroyer broke formation, its captain apparently deciding that survival trumped doctrine. Its plasma batteries lashed out in desperate patterns, but the human ships danced through the fire like they were born to it, their chaotic movement patterns impossible to predict or counter. "Third ship is trying to call for reinforcements," the tactical officer reported, his earlier formality replaced by battle-focused efficiency. "Should I jam them?" "Let them call," Nolan replied, his coin flipping faster now as adrenaline sharpened his focus. "I want their friends to hear this." The battle's crescendo came when the Intrepid led a coordinated charge that would have made military academies weep. 3 human ships converged on the damaged Kaelid leader from different vectors, their attack patterns so chaotically intertwined that their own targeting computers should have failed. Instead, Sofia's modifications turned confusion into precision, each ship's weapons finding gaps in the enemy's shields that geometry said shouldn't exist. The Kaelid destroyer died in silence, its hull cracking like an egg as human fury found its reactor core. The explosion sent debris cascading through the field, adding to the chaos that had already claimed 2 ships of the supposedly superior Kaelid Navy. As the surviving destroyer limped away, its perfect hull scarred by human ingenuity and desperate courage, the fleet's comm channels erupted in celebration. For the first time since the blockade began, humanity had drawn alien blood. "Nice work, everyone," Nolan said, his voice carrying across all channels. But this was just the opening act. The real show's about to begin. The coin in his palm grew still as he watched the Kaelid retreat disappear into hyperspace, carrying word of humanity's chaotic excellence to the blockade commanders. Soon, very soon, they would face the full weight of alien perfection. He was looking forward to it. The tactical hologram floating above the Intrepid's briefing table looked like a three-dimensional nightmare. Red icons representing Kaelid ships formed concentric spheres around the Nexus route, their positions shifting with mechanical precision as new reinforcements arrived hourly. Nolan counted them twice, his coin flipping in increasingly rapid patterns as the numbers climbed. 87 confirmed contacts, the tactical officer reported, his voice strained despite his military training. And those are just the ones we can see. Intelligence suggests they have at least another 20 ships in reserve. Sofia leaned against the bulkhead, her amber eyes reflecting the tactical display's crimson glow. They're not taking any chances this time. Look at those formation intervals, overlapping sensor nets, redundant communication relays, perfect geometric spacing for maximum fire coordination. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture betraying her unease. This isn't a blockade anymore. It's a wall. Captain Calvin's face appeared on the communication screen, her expression grim. My scouts report Kaelid patrols in every system within 3 jumps of the Nexus route. They're not just blocking trade, they're strangling the entire sector. The navigator's gravelly voice cut through the tension from her station. Been charting their patrol patterns for 6 hours, Cap. These aren't the same rigid formations we've been dancing around. Someone over there learned from our little debris field party. Nolan's coin stilled as he absorbed the implications. The Kaelids had adapted. Not much. Their ordered minds probably couldn't handle true chaos, but enough to close the obvious gaps his fleet had been exploiting. Show me their new patterns. The hologram shifted, displaying movement vectors and patrol routes that formed an intricate web around the Nexus route. Where before the Kaelid ships had moved in predictable geometric formations, now they flowed like liquid mercury, filling gaps before they could be exploited, covering each other's blind spots with mathematical precision. They've doubled their sensor coverage, the tactical officer continued, his formal tone unable to mask growing concern, tripled their response time to any anomalous contacts, and look at these weapon placements. They're prepared for attacks from literally every possible vector. Sofia pushed off from the bulkhead, her engineering mind already wrestling with the problem. Give me a minute. Her fingers flew over her portable diagnostic unit, calling up schematics and tactical analyses. There, she said finally, pointing to a section of the Kaelid formation. See that gap between patrol sectors 7 and 12? Nolan studied the display. I see a lot of empty space covered by at least 6 different sensor arrays. Exactly. They're overcovering that area because their tactical AI identifies it as a likely attack vector. But look at the timing. Her calloused hands manipulated the hologram, showing patrol schedules in accelerated time. Every 14 minutes and 37 seconds, there's a 17-second window where the sensor coverage overlaps just enough to create a blind spot. 17 seconds, Captain Calvin's voice carried skeptical disbelief. To get through their entire perimeter? The navigator's chuckle drifted from her station. Might be enough time to get a few ships through, if you don't mind flying through a space that's about to be filled with plasma fire from 6 directions. Nolan resumed flipping his coin, the rhythm steady now as his Earth-trained mind began to see possibilities in the impossible. What would we need to make it work? Sofia's sharp grin appeared. Everything we've got, plus some modifications that would make a sane engineer weep. I'm talking about stripping life support to boost engines, pulling power from weapons to overcharge the shields, and jury-rigging our sensor arrays to broadcast false signatures in 17 different directions at once. In other words, the tactical officer said slowly, we'd be committing our entire fleet to a single desperate charge with no backup plan and no guarantee of survival. The room fell silent except for the steady hum of the Intrepid's life support systems. Through the viewport, the nebula's chaotic beauty swirled in patterns that reminded Nolan of storm clouds over Earth's scarred continents. He'd made his career reading those patterns, finding opportunity in chaos, turning humanity's greatest weakness into its deadliest strength. "We'll need a diversion," he said finally. "Something big enough to draw their attention away from that 17-second window." Sofia's eyes lit up with predatory anticipation. "I might have some ideas about that." "And we'll need to hit them where it hurts most," Nolan continued, his voice gaining the hard edge of command. "Not just break through their blockade, shatter it completely. Make them understand that humanity doesn't just fight for survival, we fight to win." The tactical officer straightened in his chair, military precision warring with growing respect for his captain's chaotic strategies. "What are your orders, sir?" Nolan's coin caught the light as it spun through the air, then disappeared into his closed fist. "We're going to do something so insane, so completely against every rule of space combat, that their perfect AI won't know how to respond." Through the comm, Captain Calvin's voice carried cautious hope. "I'm listening. We're going to split our forces, attack from multiple vectors, and use their own tactical superiority against them." Nolan's rare grin spread across his weathered face. "And then we're going to teach the galaxy what happens when you corner a species that learned to fight in chaos." Outside, the nebula continued its eternal dance, beautiful and deadly and completely unpredictable, just like humanity itself. Sofia's fingers flew across her improvised hacking rig, streams of data cascading down jury-rigged screens as she burrowed deeper into the captured Kaelid communication node. The Intrepid's engineering bay hummed with makeshift equipment, salvaged processors, modified human interfaces, and alien technology that should have been incompatible but somehow worked under her chaotic genius. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, tucking stray hair behind her ear for the dozenth time in 10 minutes. "Look at these communication protocols, Nolan. Every Kaelid ship is receiving identical tactical updates down to the microsecond." Nolan leaned over her shoulder, studying the scrolling alien script that Sofia's translation algorithms were converting to human-readable text. His coin had stopped moving entirely. Never a good sign. "Explain it to me like I'm not an engineer." "Imagine a chess game where every piece moves at exactly the same time, following moves decided by someone who can see the entire board." Sofia's amber eyes reflected the screen's glow as she highlighted sections of code. "But chess players make mistakes, have different styles, react differently under pressure. These commands are perfect. Mathematically, tactically, strategically perfect." The tactical officer's voice crackled over the comm from the bridge. "Captain, we're detecting another formation shift in the Kaelid blockade. All 89 ships moving in perfect synchronization." Sofia's hands paused over her controls. 89 ships, moving in perfect synchronization. She pulled up the tactical data, overlaying it with the communication intercepts. No human commander could coordinate that many vessels with this precision. Hell, no biological mind could process that much tactical data simultaneously. Understanding hit Nolan like a plasma bolt to the chest. They're not being commanded. They're being controlled. Exactly. Sofia's fingers resumed their dancing, diving deeper into the alien data streams. Every ship in their fleet is receiving direct tactical instructions from a single source, not suggestions, not orders, actual control commands that override local decision-making. She pulled up a three-dimensional network diagram that made Nolan's Earth-trained mind ache. Thousands of communication threads connected every Kaelid ship to a central node, creating a web of control that pulsed with the rhythm of a vast artificial intelligence. "Meet the Overseer," Sofia said, her voice tight with discovery and dread. "A Kaelid artificial intelligence that's running their entire military operation like one giant machine." The navigator's gravelly voice drifted from the comm. "Well, that explains why they move like they're all reading from the same script. Makes you wonder what happens when someone edits the script." Sofia's sharp grin returned, predatory and dangerous. "That's exactly what I was thinking." Her hands flew over the modified controls, probing the edges of the Overseer's network. "If I can find a way into its command protocols—" "Careful," Nolan warned, his battle-tested intuition screaming warnings. "If that thing is controlling their entire fleet, it's probably protected by security systems that would make Earth's military weep." "Oh, it is?" Sofia's laugh carried genuine respect for her digital opponent. This AI is beautiful, in a terrifying, completely inhuman way. It processes tactical data from thousands of sources simultaneously, runs combat simulations at quantum speeds, and coordinates fleet movements with precision that defies belief. She paused, her expression growing thoughtful. But it has one weakness. Which is? It's too perfect. Sofia's calloused fingers trace connections on her displays. The Overseer optimizes everything according to mathematical models of ideal space combat. It assumes enemies will behave logically, follow predictable tactical doctrine, make decisions based on rational analysis of available options. Nolan's coin resumed its steady rhythm as understanding dawned. It's never fought humans before. Never fought anyone who weaponizes chaos, Sofia confirmed. Look at these response patterns. Every time we've done something unpredictable, the entire Kaelid fleet has had to pause and recalculate. Not individual ships making tactical adjustments, but the whole network experiencing system-wide delays while the Overseer processes data that doesn't fit its models. The tactical officer's voice carried new urgency. Captain, I'm detecting increased communication traffic from the Kaelid fleet. Whatever you're doing down there, they've noticed. Sofia's screens erupted with warning indicators as automated defense systems began probing her intrusion attempts. The Overseer knows I'm here. It's trying to trace my connection, probably planning to fry every system on the ship to stop me. Can you get deeper before it cuts you off? Give me 30 seconds. Her hands moved in patterns that seemed to defy physics, human intuition dancing with alien logic in ways that should have been impossible. I'm not trying to destroy it. Not yet. I'm planting seeds of chaos in its tactical databases. The lights in engineering flickered as the Overseer's counterattack intensified, but Sofia's jury-rigged defenses held. Years of keeping human technology running in impossible conditions had taught her to turn limitations into advantages, weakness into strength. There, she breathed, her fingers finally still. I've introduced corrupted data into its fleet coordination subroutines. Nothing obviously wrong, just small inconsistencies that will cascade through its decision trees. Nolan watched the tactical display shift as the Kaelid formation wavered, ships taking microseconds longer to respond to commands, formation spacing becoming fractionally less perfect. How long before it realizes what you've done? The Overseer is smart, but it thinks in patterns we can predict. Sofia's grin turned savage. It'll spend the next several hours trying to identify and correct the anomalies, which means several hours of degraded performance across their entire fleet. Through the comm, Captain Calvin's voice carried cautious hope. The blockade formation is showing gaps, small ones, but gaps nonetheless. That's our window, Nolan decided, his coin catching light as it spun. All ships prepare for immediate assault. We hit them while their perfect AI is busy chasing ghosts in its own programming. As alarms began wailing throughout the ship, Sofia looked up from her screens with eyes that gleamed like polished amber. Next time I get into that system, I'm not just planting seeds, I'm burning the whole digital forest down. The war had just become personal. The human fleet spread across 3 sectors like a pack of wolves, each group following attack vectors that made no tactical sense individually, but formed a chaotic symphony of misdirection. Nolan watched from the Intrepid's bridge as his carefully orchestrated madness unfolded, his coin spinning in steady rhythm, while the Kaelid formation tried to respond to attacks coming from everywhere at once. Fight Alpha is engaging. Captain Calvin's voice crackled over the comm. Her group of 6 ships had burst from hyperspace directly at the strongest point of the Kaelid blockade, weapons blazing in what appeared to be a desperate frontal assault. The Overseer's response was immediate and overwhelming. 20 ships converged on her position with mathematical precision. They're taking the bait, the tactical officer reported, his formal training giving way to excitement as he watched the enemy formation shift. 40% of their fleet is moving to intercept the primary threat. Sofia's laugh echoed from her engineering station, where she monitored the Overseer's increasingly frantic attempts to process the human attack patterns. The AI is having a fit. It keeps trying to identify our primary objective, but every time it thinks it's figured out our strategy, we do something else completely insane. The navigator's gravelly voice cut through the bridge chatter. Fight Beta is in position, Cap, ready to make some noise. Execute, Nolan commanded. On the far side of the blockade, Captain Voss led 8 ships in what looked like a mining operation gone wrong. Modified industrial equipment threw clouds of metallic chaff into space, while civilian cargo haulers broadcast false sensor signatures that made them appear to be battleships. The Overseer, already straining to coordinate responses to multiple threats, allocated additional resources to counter this new mining fleet. Beautiful, Sofia breathed, her fingers dancing over controls as she monitored the AI's decision trees. The Overseer is trying to optimize for 17 different scenarios simultaneously. Its processing cycles are bogging down as it runs millions of tactical simulations. But the real chaos was yet to come. Nolan's main force, 9 ships including the Intrepid, had been moving through the debris fields for hours, taking advantage of the sensor shadows created by the feints to position themselves in the one place the Overseer hadn't predicted, directly above the Kaelid command ship. All ships prepare for Phase 3, Nolan announced, his voice carrying the calm certainty of a man who'd made peace with beautiful destruction. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to break their perfect machine. The Intrepid dropped out of the debris field like a predator from the shadows, her mismatched weapon systems already charging. Behind her, 8 more human ships emerged from concealment points that shouldn't have existed, their jury-rigged systems screaming, targeting solutions that violated every known principle of space combat. The Overseer's response was instantaneous but wrong. Its tactical algorithms, designed for logical combat against predictable enemies, allocated defensive resources based on the perceived threat level of human weapons. What it couldn't calculate was the cumulative effect of Sofia's modifications: mining lasers reconfigured for armor penetration, civilian sensor arrays converted to electronic warfare platforms, cargo manipulation fields weaponized into gravitational anomalies. "Direct hit on their command ship," the tactical officer shouted, his composure finally cracking as human ingenuity met alien perfection and won. "Shields down 30%, and, Captain, are you seeing this?" Through the tactical display, they watched the Kaelid fleet stagger like a boxer taking a haymaker to the jaw. The Overseer's perfect coordination faltered as corrupted data from Sofia's earlier infiltration combined with the chaos of simultaneous attacks from impossible angles. Ships that should have been providing covering fire instead found themselves out of position, their movements delayed by microseconds as the AI struggled to process tactical data that made no sense. "Now, Sofia," Nolan commanded, "hit them with everything." Sofia's fingers flew over her jury-rigged hacking rig, diving back into the Overseer's systems while its attention was fractured across multiple battlefronts. This time, she wasn't planting subtle seeds of corruption. She was introducing pure chaos into the AI's tactical databases. "I'm feeding it false sensor readings from non-existent ships," she reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Phantom fleets attacking from vectors that don't exist, weapon signatures that violate physics, battle damage reports that contradict each other." The effect was immediate and devastating. The Kaelid formation, which moments before had been a perfect sphere of coordinated destruction, began to fracture as individual ships received conflicting orders from their central AI. Some vessels moved to engage threats that weren't there, while others held position against attacks that were all too real. "The Overseer is overloading," Sofia announced, her amber eyes reflecting the chaos on her screens. "It's trying to process thousands of contradictory data points simultaneously. Its decision trees are crashing and rebuilding every few seconds." Captain Calvin's voice crackled over the comm, her earlier desperation replaced by predatory joy. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up. Half their fleet just stopped shooting back." The navigator's chuckle drifted from her station. "Look at that, 50 years of flying through Earth's storm systems, and I finally get to see aliens learn what chaos really means." But even as human ships pressed their advantage, Nolan felt the familiar weight of impending disaster. The Overseer was learning, adapting, beginning to filter out the false data. Soon, too soon, it would regain control of the Kaelid fleet, and when that happened, humanity's brief advantage would evaporate like morning frost. "All ships begin withdrawal," he commanded, his coin's rhythm increasing as tactical instinct warred with the desire to press their advantage. "We've shown them what we can do. Time to leave before they figure out how to counter it." As the human fleet faded back into the debris fields and sensor shadows, leaving the Kaelid blockade reeling but intact, Sofia looked up from her screens with an expression of grim satisfaction. "The Overseer knows we can hurt it now," she said. "Next time won't be so easy." Through the viewport, the alien ships began to reform their perfect formations, but something had changed. The mathematical precision was still there, but now it carried an edge of caution that hadn't existed before. Humanity had introduced doubt into a machine built for certainty. The Overseer had learned. Nolan felt it in his bones as the Kaelid counterattack materialized around his fleet like a closing fist. Where before their formations had been rigid and predictable, now they flowed like liquid mercury, adapting to human chaos with terrifying efficiency. His coin had stopped moving entirely, a sure sign that his Earth-trained intuition was screaming warnings his conscious mind was still processing. 70 ships, the tactical officer reported, his voice cracking despite his military training. "Coming from vectors we didn't even know they were watching. Captain, they've been tracking us for hours." The Intrepid shuddered as plasma bolts lashed across her shields, each impact precisely calculated to exploit weaknesses that shouldn't have been predictable. Around her, the human fleet scattered like startled birds, but the Kaelid ships were already anticipating their evasion patterns, herding them toward predetermined kill zones with mathematical precision. "They're not making the same mistakes," Sofia called from her engineering station, her amber eyes reflecting the chaos on her displays. "The Overseer has isolated my previous infiltration attempts, built countermeasures into its tactical subroutines. Every time I try to inject false data, it catches the corruption before it can spread." The navigator's gravelly voice cut through the bridge alarms. "Cap, they're boxing us in. Whatever that AI learned from our last dance, it learned good." Nolan watched his carefully orchestrated chaos crumble as the Kaelid fleet demonstrated adaptation that bordered on prescience. Their ships moved in patterns that accounted for human unpredictability, leaving no gaps for exploitation, no opportunities for the kind of chaotic maneuvers that had worked before. "Captain Calvin to Intrepid," the comm crackled with desperation. "My engines are gone, weapons offline. They're targeting our jury-rigged systems specifically, like they know exactly what we modified." Nolan felt it in his bones as the Kaelid counterattack materialized around his fleet like a closing fist. Where before their formations had been rigid and predictable, now they flowed like liquid mercury, adapting to human chaos with terrifying efficiency. His coin had stopped moving entirely, a sure sign that his Earth-trained intuition was screaming warnings his conscious mind was still processing. 70 ships, the tactical officer reported, his voice cracking despite his military training. "Coming from vectors we didn't even know they were watching. Captain, they've been tracking us for hours." The Intrepid shuddered as plasma bolts lashed across her shields, each impact precisely calculated to exploit weaknesses that shouldn't have been predictable. Around her, the human fleet scattered like startled birds, but the Kaelid ships were already anticipating their evasion patterns, herding them toward predetermined kill zones with mathematical precision. "They're not making the same mistakes," Sofia called from her engineering station, her amber eyes reflecting the chaos on her displays. "The Overseer has isolated my previous infiltration attempts, built countermeasures into its tactical subroutines. Every time I try to inject false data, it catches the corruption before it can spread." The navigator's gravelly voice cut through the bridge alarms. "Cap, they're boxing us in. Whatever that AI learned from our last dance, it learned good." Nolan watched his carefully orchestrated chaos crumble as the Kaelid fleet demonstrated adaptation that bordered on prescience. Their ships moved in patterns that accounted for human unpredictability, leaving no gaps for exploitation, no opportunities for the kind of chaotic maneuvers that had worked before. "Captain Calvin to Intrepid," the comm crackled with desperation. My engines are gone, weapons offline. They're targeting our jury-rigged systems specifically, like they know exactly what we modified. Nolan slammed his fist on the armrest of his command chair, the metallic clang echoing through the tense bridge. Status report. Give me something I can work with. Shields at 40%, Captain, the tactical officer yelled, his voice strained. Hull integrity at 60. We're taking heavy fire from multiple vectors. Sofia, any way to break their lock? Anything? Nolan demanded, turning to his chief engineer. Sofia's face was grim, sweat beading on her forehead as she furiously worked her console. The Overseers learned to filter out our chaotic signatures. It's predicting our movements before we even make them. It's like fighting a ghost that knows your next move. She slammed her fist on a panel. Oh my gosh, this is too perfect! Through the main viewport, a Kaelid destroyer, its hull gleaming with alien precision, began to align its main cannon with the Intrepid bridge. Nolan knew that look. It was the look of inevitable, precise destruction. Navigator, evasive maneuvers, anything. No room, Cap, the navigator shouted, her usual calm replaced by frantic urgency. They've got us pinned. Their formation is a solid wall. A blinding flash erupted from the Kaelid destroyer's cannon. Time seemed to slow. Nolan saw the plasma bolt hurtling towards them, a spear of pure energy aimed directly at their heart. He closed his eyes, his hand instinctively reaching for the coin in his pocket. It wasn't there. He'd left it on his console, a tiny, insignificant piece of metal in the face of overwhelming alien perfection. But then something unexpected happened. A faint ripple, almost imperceptible, shimmered across the Kaelid destroyer's hull just as the plasma bolt fired. The bolt veered, not by much, but enough. It grazed the Intrepid port side instead of obliterating the bridge, tearing a gaping hole in the hull and sending sparks showering across the command deck. The ship lurched violently, alarms screaming, but they were still alive. Nolan's eyes snapped open. What was that? Sofia, her face pale but her eyes wide with a new kind of fierce determination, looked up from her console. I don't know, a glitch? A momentary instability in their targeting matrix? She shook her head. No, it was too precise for a glitch. Someone or something helped us. Suddenly, a new voice, calm and resonant, filled the bridge comms. It was not Captain Calvin nor Captain Voss. It was a voice that resonated with ancient power, a voice that seemed to echo from the very fabric of space itself. The Overseer's perfection is its greatest flaw, the voice stated. It cannot comprehend true randomness, true chaos. It seeks order in all things, and that makes it vulnerable to the truly unpredictable. Nolan stared at the main view screen, searching for the source of the voice. Who is this? We are the architects of the void, the voice replied, guardians of the Nexus, observers of the cosmic dance. We have watched your species, humanity, for millennia. Your chaotic nature, your ability to find patterns in disorder, to thrive in the unpredictable, it is unique, and it is a threat to the Kaelid Overseer's absolute control. A new icon appeared on the tactical display, massive and ethereal, flickering at the edge of the system. It was unlike any ship Nolan had ever seen, more a construct of pure energy and light than metal. The Kaelids sought to impose their perfect order upon the Nexus, the architect's voice continued, to streamline the flow of all life, to remove all variables. But the Nexus thrives on chaos, on the unpredictable ebb and flow of existence. Your species, humanity, is a reflection of the Nexus itself. You're saying you're helping us? Sofia asked, her mind already trying to comprehend the impossible. We are restoring balance, the architect confirmed. The Overseer has become too powerful, its influence spreading like a disease, stifling the natural evolution of the cosmos. Your chaotic essence is the antidote. On the tactical display, the Kaelid fleet, moments ago a perfectly coordinated machine, began to show signs of disarray. The Overseer's predictive algorithms, already strained by Sofia's previous attacks, were now being bombarded by an entirely new form of interference. Not false data, but true randomness, patterns that defied any logical interpretation. It was like trying to calculate the trajectory of a snowflake in a hurricane. They're hesitating, the tactical officer stammered, pointing at the display. Their ships are breaking formation. Some are even firing on each other. Sofia's eyes gleamed. The architects are introducing pure, unadulterated chaos into the Overseer's core programming. It's like a virus that attacks its very logic. It can't process what it's seeing, so it's defaulting to random actions. Nolan felt a surge of exhilaration. This was it, the ultimate weaponization of chaos. Navigator, full power to engines, tactical, target their command ship. Sofia, can you amplify whatever the architects are doing? I can try, Sofia yelled, her hands a blur over her console. I'll use our jury-rigged systems to act as a conduit, a megaphone for their chaos. The Intrepid, battered but unbowed, surged forward, its mismatched weapons spitting fire. The Kaelid fleet was in disarray, their perfect formations dissolving into a panicked scramble. Ships collided, shields flickered erratically, and plasma bolts flew wildly, often striking their own allies. The Overseer, the supposedly infallible AI, was in a state of digital meltdown. Captain Calvin's voice, no longer desperate, now carried a note of fierce joy. "They're running, Nolan. The Kaelids are breaking. They can't handle it." Captain Voss chimed in, his scarred face probably split by a wide grin. "Never thought I'd see the day alien perfection got a taste of good old-fashioned human madness." The architects of the Void, their ethereal ship pulsating with light, continued to flood the Nexus with pure, unadulterated chaos, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a force of rebalancing. The Kaelid Overseer, unable to process the unpredictable, began to shut down, its vast network of control collapsing in on itself. Individual Kaelid ships, suddenly freed from the AI's iron grip, found themselves adrift in a universe they no longer understood, their rigid minds incapable of independent thought or improvisation. Some Kaelid ships simply drifted, their systems going dark as their crews, accustomed to being mere extensions of the Overseer, were paralyzed by the sudden need for independent decision-making. Others, in a desperate attempt to regain order, self-destructed, unable to reconcile the chaos around them with their ingrained need for perfection. The Nexus route, once a strangled artery, began to breathe again. Merchant convoys, hidden for weeks, cautiously emerged from their safe havens, their captains marveling at the sight of the shattered Kaelid blockade. Days later, the Intrepid was undergoing extensive repairs in a temporary dock carved out of a large asteroid. Nolan stood on the bridge, watching the last of the Kaelid wreckage being cleared away. The Nexus was alive again, humming with the traffic of 1,000 species, all grateful for the unexpected liberation. Sofia, her hands still stained with grease, joined him, a rare calm on her face. The architects, they've gone silent, disappeared as mysteriously as they appeared. They restored the balance, Nolan mused, flipping his coin. He'd found it under his console after the battle, a small, comforting weight in his palm. They showed the Kaelids that true order isn't about control, but about the unpredictable dance of life. And they showed us that our chaos isn't just a weakness, but our greatest strength, Sofia added, a thoughtful look in her amber eyes. The Overseer was a machine of perfect logic. We broke it with illogical brilliance. The navigator sauntered onto the bridge, a mug of steaming synth coffee in her hand. "So, Cap, what's next? More chaos to stir up?" Nolan grinned, a genuine, unburdened smile. "The Nexus is free for now, but the galaxy is a big place, and there's always someone trying to impose their perfect order on it." He looked out at the vibrant, chaotic swirl of the Helix Nebula. Humanity's job, I suppose, is to remind them that true life thrives in the beautiful madness. The coin spun in the air, catching the light, then landed perfectly in his palm. The Nexus was safe, the Kaelid threat shattered, and humanity, the masters of chaos, had found their true purpose in the vast, unpredictable expanse of the cosmos. Their story was far from over. It had just truly begun.